There is a saying here about how can you tell when a piece of legislation is, striking the right amount of balance. It's when neither side likes it, right? When neither side has seen too much compromise that they don't like it, right? And so we're seeing tensions flare on the Senate floor as Democrats are holding up the coronavirus stimulus relief bill. And of course the Democrats are holding it up trying to say, oh, no, it goes too much for businesses. Yeah, right. It's going too much for businesses, and we're trying to protect, working families and working people. And it's like, no, you're not. You're trying to get more funding, over to Planned Parenthood so that they have more money to donate into your campaign coffers. The Democrats are holding this up in order to get a political wish list. They're trying to hold the American people hostage in a time of complete and total crisis because of the coronavirus and the shutting down of businesses and the economy on a must-pass legislation. So they're holding it up for a wish list of, their, political agenda, and they want to be able to solidify everything as permanent rather than focusing just on what the temporary needs are while the economy is shut down to deal with the coronavirus. Right this is one of those things, in emergency bills where they try to lade it with so much pork, so much non-related items that, it drives up the cost of the total package. They drive up the cost of the spending, and, they can always claim it's for the people. Well, this provides a check that goes directly towards working families, right? Or more specifically, direct deposited. And yes, we do need money to go towards businesses because guess what? Small businesses, especially, they're not having any money coming in, especially in the restaurant and hospitality businesses, and yet they still have expenses, not only for the business, but because most entrepreneurs, income and personal expenses are paid for by the profits made from the business that they run. The amount of available cash flow is going down. And when we take a look at, the projection of upwards of 20% unemployment is because we're looking at all these businesses that are going to cave from the fact that they have no revenue coming in, but they still have plenty of expenses. And the damage that is going to cause to the economy. People need jobs to be able to go back to when everything opens up. So yes, some money needs to go towards businesses. Now, I like the idea of making these as loans that people pay back because then it's not really costing the government anything, is it? I mean, think about this. When they're talking about too much geared towards businesses and business loans, right? Because no one's talking really about just giving the businesses, free money. We're talking about loans that will be paid back. Now they'll be paid back over a period of time. So are these amount of money that is going towards businesses and corporations really costing us anything? I mean, and now, with the proposal that is in place, a lot of those loans will be paid back with interest, right? And so when they talk about money going to corporations, it's not actually costing us anything because they're paying it back. It's actually going to probably make some money because it's being paid back with interest by those who take it to help fund, from that interest, a portion of the cost of the money that is going towards the individual people. See, the Republicans are trying to figure out ways in order to keep businesses open without it, costing the government too much. Yeah, it costs up front, but they'll be recouping that money. And they're trying to figure out ways to pay for the money that is going directly towards individuals. And they're going to try and fund at least a portion of that off of the interest to the loans that are made towards these businesses. I mean, at least that's, has been part of the details, so far. Of course, as negotiations go on and everything, you never know what the final bill is going to look like once we finally get this passed. But, the Democrats, they don't care about, that the people are struggling because, those people who aren't able to work from home because they are in the hospitality business, they are in the service industry, they are in the entertainment industry. Now, yes, there's a lot of people that they haven't lost any income because they just, picked a spot in their house, opened their computer, and kept on working, right? So yes, I get that those people are not the biggest needs because they're still working, but for the people who literally cannot earn a paycheck right now because they're not allowed to go into work, they're struggling, and this would actually help them. Now there's a lot of big corporations out there that have continued, even if the people haven't been able to come in and can't work from home. For instance, let's take a look at some of the banking industries. People don't realize this, but a lot of bankers, even, those that don't work in the bank branch, probably can't work from home. You know why? Because they deal with customer private information. Information such as, when they look at an account, they probably have access to social security numbers. Do you really want those people working from home with all that sensitive information, not knowing whether or not their own home networks are secured from hackers? No. And there's a lot of other back-end stuff, of banks that, deal with contract workers. And so they're not able to go in. And so, but they're still by and large getting paid. So we take a look at, these things. But when we go through and we see how the American people are responding, they're finding out that Democrats are always talking about being for the people. And now that we hit a crisis, what do we see? We see the Republicans are being overly generous here, to the point where a lot of conservatives are like, wait, we are going way too far. Now we're trying to dig into the details and going, okay, I don't really like this, but at least the businesses will be paying it back. So long term, it won't really cost as much as, what it sounds like. Some of it is going to be paid back with interest. So, okay, short-term loans. Not really sure how I feel about the government being in the money lending industry, but, we did force these businesses to close down. I really don't like this, but at least it seems like there's a plan to actually pay for it over time, right? And that is the only thing that has, conservatives somewhat, that I shouldn't say somewhat in support, but are not as disagreeable with this, particular package as we would if it was just a complete handout, right? As a complete handout, because we know that, the business side of it is looking as payback plus helping to fund some of the individual side. Okay. We don't really like it, but we understand this is a national emergency. And so crisis management is not how you manage, a functioning economy and a prosperous economy. It's how you get through the crisis and then clean up the crisis later. We understand that. We don't like it, but we understand it, right? And so we're seeing all this, and the Democrats, though, they're holding everything up. Why? They're playing politics. Let's go through here and take a look at, a couple things here. Now, as they go through and they stall, their demands and the things that they are putting on their wish list for this package is getting longer and longer. It's really quite an amazing situation. Now, of course, the Democrats are saying, well, we just want to provide some more oversight and accountability. And yeah. You're looking for things that you can twist and spin in political ads, after all of this, is on. But there has been things like Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood. What the hell does Planned Parenthood have to do with the coronavirus crisis? Seriously, what does, Planned Parenthood do? They're not healthcare providers. They don't provide any actual medical service of any relevance to coronavirus. And outside of coronavirus, they don't actually provide any medical service. They're abortion providers. They don't save lives, they take lives, right? So why the hell are we concerned about Planned Parenthood and a coronavirus funding bill, right? It makes no sense. And there's a lot of other, of these examples going on here. And so it's like, okay, you don't hold the American people hostage. And I wonder what the American people are seeing, especially those on the left, realizing that when push comes to shove and a time of crisis is happening, the Republicans are there trying to give them, the average person, a bailout from the crisis, and the Democrats are the ones holding them up. How is this going to play out during the election? I mean, Democrats, you're being complete morons here. Do you really think you're going to have a shot in the 2020 election? I mean, your shots were already slim to begin with before the crisis, but do you really think you're going to have a shot after the way you've been acting at even coming close? We're starting to get closer and closer to a Reagan landslide here with Trump because of the bull crap that you keep pushing, right? Now, personally, from a political standpoint, I say, hey, great, keep it up. Keep it up. It's only doing great things for the prospects of, expanding and growing the conservative movement and bringing back, full-scale capitalism as, all these regulations and such being tossed out is getting rid of a lot of the cronyism, right? So what the hell are you thinking? Why do you keep holding this up? Now, again, this is not as though I think this is a great bill, right? I think there's a lot of things in here I don't like. But I also think that, we're in a crisis. It's not the fault of the people or the businesses, right? And, I understand that in legislation and trying to deal with a crisis, you don't put out your wish list, your political wish list of what you would want to see in this bill, based on, from the election. They basically want to act like, okay, we won the election, so we're going to throw a bunch of the stuff and the policy without and hold us hostage. No, you don't hold the people hostage. We understand that, the bill, no matter, what's in it, people are going to hate it. I know I'm not going to like it, but I at least understand some of it. And I at least understand how they plan to try and recoup and, fund some of it. All right. And that is taking some of the edge off, right? And people are out there trying to say, well, we need to do a little more means testing and a little of this and a little of that. And it's like, yeah, in a perfect situation, we would. In a perfect situation, we would love to be able to do that, right? But the question is, do we actually have the time to put everything in place to do all of that? Right? They're going, well, government. And it's like, government, how many of the government workers are staying at home? Right? I mean, federal employees, how many of them, because of this crisis, non-essential employees are staying home? How many of them are trying to work from home? How many of them are calling in sick? I mean, it's not like everything's operating at 100% here. Right? So I understand we don't necessarily have time, and how many people are going to run out of, food and money with no income coming in while we try and set up, what we think is the best way to test everything, the best way to means test everything. Again, crisis management is not how you would manage things in ideal situations, right? And putting in what we would ideally like to see, while great in theory, we also have time constraints. What's the best thing that we can do, and what's the best system that we can set up with the time that we have available to get this done to prevent unnecessary suffering. And that's a balance. My opinion may not be your opinion. You may think, oh, we can, wait another week. Other people think, hey, we've already waited too long. And everyone's own personal financial situation, such as, did you have an emergency fund with some emergency food and supplies before the crisis hit? If you did, you think, yes, you have more time to wait and more time to hash out and hammer out the details for the perfect, situation and the perfect, way to track everything. But if you're in a situation where you had zero emergency fund, zero emergency food, zero emergency supplies. You already received your last paycheck. Everything's shutting down. You're not receiving any more money at the moment. Things are looking like you're about to starve to death. Then you're thinking this has already taken way too long. Screw all that. We'll figure it out later. Get the money out to the people who need it. And so, depending on where you are on that scale, is going to go through and determine, what you think about this legislation, whether we need to hammer out and negotiate more versus let's just get it done. I'm taking a look at this from a perspective here of most people are financially irresponsible. 70% of Americans, according to every study, lives paycheck to paycheck. I would say only probably about 3 or 4%, of people, and that's only those who are located in very specific states that are prone to hurricane, have really, put any stock into emergency food supplies, right? So what does that mean? It means 70% of Americans can't actually wait to hammer out the perfect deal and the perfect way to track everything. Now hopefully after this, they start learning a little bit more about financial responsibility. It'd be great if, 70% of that 70%, went online, looked up Dave Ramsey and went through Financial Peace University to figure out how to handle the next crisis if and when it comes, so that we're not debating a bill like this, right? So that we're not concerned about, emergencies. Everyone has 3 months to go through and handle the crisis. I mean, could you imagine if everybody in the country had built up at least a 3-month emergency fund, 3 months of expenses saved up for emergencies? Do you know how much easier this would be? Do you know how we wouldn't need to be even debating this bill to begin with? Because we'd be like, yeah, we got, that. And businesses, right? I know the left likes to hit you on your profits, like to demonize you making profits. But can you imagine if you had set up, an emergency fund for your business, right? I know you didn't see this coming. This isn't your fault, but maybe this should be part of your planning going forward of setting up an emergency fund for your business of 3 months at least, or possibly 6 months. Why? That way, if something like this happens, and basically what we are seeing, as far as China and some other places, viruses and, mutating and outbreaking could become a little more, normal or happen at a little more frequency than what they have in the past, right? Now, could you imagine everyone saved up 3 months of expenses into an emergency fund, never touch that money except for emergencies? Now let's see what would happen if in this situation we had done that. Everyone would just be like, yeah, well, whatever, you asked for 15 days, I can survive for 3 months. Or you asked for 15 days, I got enough to survive for 6 months. No big deal. I'll just relax and all that. There won't be any of these huge bailouts or anything. Everyone would just be sitting fine. So hopefully that changes in the future, where people plan for emergencies a lot better than what we have, and we end the trend of living paycheck to paycheck. But since we are where we are, and we can't debate on where we wish we were, right? We have to deal with some realities. And the reality is, while this bill is something that we should never have had to deal with to begin with, while this bill is something that, I think is not, great, and there's a lot of things in there that I hate it, I also understand that my situation is not necessarily as dire as a lot of other people. And so balancing that out, maybe you fall differently on the scale, and that's okay. Now, after this crisis is over, businesses open up and people are back to work. No more bailout, right? No more. But it's only because government shut everything down. And we can debate somewhere else whether or not we think that was overkill, right? We can debate that. But because government shut it down, we can't just leave, people floating in the wind with no ability to get food, water, or, keep the lights on, right? Government took an action, government, we need to kind of deal with the reality of that, even if we hate how we have to do it, and hope we can put enough pressure on government to get more responsible with how they handle, taxpayer money, right? And how they handle everything after this, to become more fiscally responsible and start paying down the debt, right? So let me know what you think. Give me your comments in the video below, whether you're watching this on YouTube, BitChute, or wherever else. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you.